Breaking news today, Israel says it has not received the body of hostage Shiri Bibas from Hamas, instead receiving an unidentified body. In a statement, the IDF says the identification process has found that the additional body received was not that of Shiri Bibas. No match was found for any other abductee. It is an anonymous body without identification. The IDF has called the incident a serious violation by Hamas and is demanding the militant group return Ms Bibas along with all other hostages. It's confirmed it received the bodies of Shiri's children, Ariel and Kfir Bibas. Jewish leader Alex Rifchin says it appears as though Hamas is trying to provoke Israel.
It looks as though they're trying to bait Israel into a new war. And obviously this comes at a time when 3 passenger buses, fortunately empty, in a synchronized explosion in Tel Aviv, were just detonated as well. So it very much looks like Hamas is trying to goad or bait Israel back into a war. Perhaps they feel like they haven't succeeded in achieving their initial war aims. The ceasefire was always going to be fragile, but this is clearly a major provocation. And I think Hamas know exactly what they're playing at.
This follows that handover ceremony described as abhorrent by human rights groups, the militant group parading 4 black coffins before they were placed in a Red Cross vehicle, as I say, described by the UN human rights chief as abhorrent and cruel. Israel says it extends its heartfelt condolences to the Bibas family during this incredibly difficult time.
The voices of our loved ones cry out to us from the earth. They demand that we settle accounts with the vile murderers.
Joining me live now is my Sky News colleague Chris Kenny. Chris, great to see you. This is a tragic situation though, and you can only imagine the trauma of those affected in Israel, but more broadly, this is the latest abhorrent act by that terrorist group Hamas.
Indeed, Kieran, it's unthinkable just how grotesque and repugnant this episode has become. We saw that disgusting ceremony handing over the coffins with crowds of Palestinian, Gazan children, women, men cheering and celebrating this occasion. It was just sickening. And to have the news today where we discover that of the 4 bodies, 3 are the bodies, are the remains of the people that Hamas said they were. That is little Kfir and Ariel Bibas, and of course the 84-year-old great-grandfather, Oded Lifshitz. They have those remains. They've been confirmed. But Israel says the 4th body is not that of Shiri Bibas. It's not of any other hostage either. They're saying it's another body, presumably of a Gazan woman, that's been handed back to them. Now, just why they would do this, what they're playing at, nobody knows. Israel says that their examination of the remains shows that little Ariel and Kfir and the great-grandfather, Oded Lifshitz, were all brutally murdered about a year ago. You would speculate as to whether the remains of Shiri Bibas are in an even worse state, or whether they don't have them, whether they're trying to pull the wool over the Israeli eyes, or whether they're deliberately sending back somebody else's remains. But this is just so grotesque. And if anybody has any doubts about the horrific Islamist extremist group that has been running Gaza and continues to run Gaza, well, here's your evidence to the contrary.
And it will obviously be the latest trauma for Israel and reverberate maybe even more than other cases here, because those 2 little kids with the orange hair have been the symbols in many respects for the innocents who were captured on October 7.
Well, they have, Kieran. Obviously, hundreds and thousands of people have suffered and been killed in this conflict. But I think those two little red-headed boys in the arms of their mother being kidnapped on October the 7th at gunpoint are illustrative of just how abhorrent and grotesque this terrorist attack was. Now, we've seen media and politicians around the world try to make excuses for Hamas, try to portray them as some sort of Palestinian liberation army. They are not. They are a nihilist, death cult, an Islamist terrorist group, and that's what we're seeing play out here. And we're also seeing play out there's so many of the lies told about what was going on in Gaza. We've had all sorts of critics suggesting Gazans were starving because Israel was deliberately starving them during this war, that Hamas didn't exist, that their soldiers had been wiped out. Well, now we see the Hamas terrorists in soldiers' outfits again, now that the ceasefire is in place. And previously they were suggesting everybody who was killed was a civilian. So I think we're seeing in this gross display, if there's any silver lining to this horribly repugnant sort of death cult theatre, it is that we're seeing the true, the whole world can't avert its eyes. They are seeing the true status of Hamas and those who support them in Gaza. And of course, I should quickly add on that, because this is not about not having sympathy for the Palestinian people, because the Palestinian people have suffered. The innocent Palestinians who have suffered and died have died because of Hamas. Their deliberate provocations, the war they wanted, the war they know they can't win, but they want this suffering, and they've used it as a propaganda tool against Israel. They continue to do that. And as you say, Kieran, as to the relatives of the Bibas family and everybody in Israel, I did an interview with Israeli television last night. It is, as you could imagine, just so traumatic for that country and all those people seeing this unfold.
My Sky News colleague Chris Kenny, thank you. Appreciate it on that breaking news today.